Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Last week I reported on a story about the memo line within the XRP Ledger transactions being taken advantage of to spam the network, number one, and number two, upload rather illicit materials. I've got an update for you on that. Ripple CTO David Schwartz, who is also the co-creator of the XRP Ledger itself, has chimed in, and I've got an article from the Daily Hodl with his thoughts on the issue. Another topic I'm going to cover with you briefly is the concept of what happens as XRP is burned as there are more transactions over time. Are we at risk of running out of XRP? And then I'll close up the video by covering a piece that somebody sent to me. It's a Forbes piece about Congress kind of realizing maybe we really not just shouldn't, but can't stop this whole Bitcoin thing. So I'll cover that as well. Now, before we get going, if you would please delicately tap that like button, and if you are a fan of Ripple and XRP, go ahead and subscribe. You'll have a good time here. All right, so this piece from the Daily Hodl, it is titled, Ripple Responds to Alarm Over Potential XRP Ledger Loophole. Ripple's Chief Technology Officer David Schwartz is responding to concerns about a new open-source tool designed to let people upload files of any size onto the XRP Ledger. The tool was released by an anonymous developer. It utilizes the fact that when sending XRP, a user can write a memo that is included with the transaction. By leveraging the memo feature, the tool allows users to essentially upload files of all kinds onto the ledger. The founder of Ripple-backed XRPL Labs, Wietse, was the first to raise questions about whether the tool will be used to give people a way to upload illegal content onto the ledger. He addressed the anonymous developer on GitHub. Now, I'm about to read a quote from him, and I will tell you up front, he seems much more concerned about this than David Schwartz does. And in speaking with other community members, some have concerns, and fair enough, I'm glad we have a discussion on this. I'm not completely convinced, big picture, that this is going to be something that's going to ruin the ledger. I can speak a little bit more on that in just a moment. Let me read this quote here from Wietse first, though. And he writes, I'm worried. I operate a full history node on the XRP Ledger. I am very, very much afraid of what will happen when your service will get some actual use. It'll be a matter of time before illegal content will be uploaded, especially with the hate against the XRP community from Bitcoin maximalists. When someone uploads pirated content, or worse, child abuse images, no one would be able to remove that from their full history servers. That would mean it would become a legal nightmare to run a full history node, not only for me, but for all XRP Ledger enthusiasts and businesses. I would kindly ask, and then parentheses he writes, beg, you to take down the project. So that's the first quote from him right there. One thing that would ultimately solve this is if there's just a recognition that technology of pretty much any kind can be abused, and if we understand that just via the nature of decentralized cryptocurrencies, distributed ledger technology, that there can be bad actors out there, but not ban the technology as a result of something like this. I think there could be a recognition of that, and then thoughtful regulation to acknowledge this, so that ledgers like XRP and blockchains in general can move forward. I think that would be highly beneficial. We're nowhere near regulation in any capacity here, it seems, in the United States, so we'll see. But that's my initial thoughts on this. But anyway, the piece continues. Wynn says he's also concerned that users could eventually upload so many files that it becomes too expensive for companies like his to run a full history of the ledger. To counter the issue, he says the community should consider raising the fees on transactions that take up a significant amount of data. Now, here's another quote from Wietse on that concern. In the long term, I would suggest an amendment for the XRP Ledger to exponentially increase the minimum transaction fee when large memos are being sent. That would render this use case non-viable. Again, I really appreciate your efforts to develop for the XRP Ledger, and please keep on doing so. But if you want to store files, consider using tech meant to store files. And then the piece continues here. Other developers on the XRP Ledger's GitHub question whether the tool could also be used to spam and slow down the network. And that seems like a much more reasonable concern that absolutely would need to be addressed if attacks like this start to get traction in any capacity. And there are solutions here, and we kind of get to those here. So here's the response from Schwartz. So the piece continues. According to developers, a Discord has already been set up to see what kind of damage, if any, the tool can do. Schwartz says he doubts there's any danger in the short term. And here's a quote from him. I guess it comes down to exactly what sort of problem we think we have. If we think that average-sized transactions are sufficiently handled with the existing fee escalation and the only real issue is that large and small transactions cost the same, then we never have to burden the most common transactions that people make today, such as transfers of XRP with no or minimal memo. I suppose the cleanest change would be to start by taking size into account when computing the base transaction fee, with things adjusted so that the vast majority of transactions made today still have a 10-drop base fee. For example, and I'm totally making numbers up here, I haven't measured, if 95% of transactions are less than 1 kilobyte, we can make transactions under 1 kilobyte pay the base fee, and transactions over 1 kilobyte pay 1 base fee per kilobyte. If we think the problem is that a bad actor can just spam the ledger with 10-drop transactions and not deny any service except to people who submit 10-drop transactions, but cause an unacceptable ledger growth rate, then I think we need to raise the base fee from 10 drops to a higher amount, or alternatively, trigger fee escalation whenever the transaction rate is higher than some amount. On the bright side, I don't believe there's any serious short-term attack. I believe the threat is that an attacker can maliciously gradually increase the cost of running a server and keeping history over a long period of time. So there you go. On the issue of spam, David Schwartz believes that just implementing a fee structure along the lines of what he proposed there may solve the problem big picture. Now, what he didn't touch on is the matter of illicit material being uploaded to the ledger, and we're just going to have to see how something like that unfolds. But I can't imagine, because here's the thing: if you're going to have a technology where there is an opportunity to have a memo line like that, it's either you understand that there are going to be bad actors, and then you don't state that somebody running a full history node is doing something illegal just by acknowledging that somebody else uploaded something illicit. Either you acknowledge that, or you have to throw away the technology. And I just can't see a world where that is allowed. And so I don't know exactly how this is going to pan out, but I think it would be absurd to allow something like that to happen. There has to be a solution here. And even if it's the fact that you can't delete this because, in fact, the XRP ledger is immutable, there has to be some sort of understanding from people at large that there are just going to be some bad actors out there. And I do think it's conceptual. Galgatron, I quoted him in a previous video last week, and he said it's kind of like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he wrote it's kind of like, graffiti on the outside of a building. That's kind of what he compared it to. But his opinion is that it shouldn't halt or slow down the XRP ledger at large. But I totally get the concerns that Win brought up about running a full history node if there's stuff like that in there. That's illicit material, that's illegal stuff. Legit concern, regardless of where you stand on the issue. It's a legit concern to be discussing here, unquestionably. I just hope that people can come to a reasonable solution for this. But I don't know if we're anywhere near it. But this is the latest I had for you on this. It was neat to see not just Wietse chime in, but now for the first time I had David Schwartz information on David Schwartz chiming in on this. So I had to share that with you also. But on to the next topic here. This is tweeted out by Vanessa Pestritto, and she is the director at Spring. And she wrote, check out this job at Ripple, Director of Developer Marketing. So just wanted to let you know, if you're in the market for a new job, maybe take a look at this. Here's the link to the actual job. Here's the description, and I will link below. So again, if you're in the market, and maybe you want to move to San Francisco if you don't live there, do something exciting with Ripple, give it a whirl. Take a look. Just thought I'd share with you. All right, and then there's this tweet from Mike Torres. He tweeted out, is it possible that all of the XRP supply could be completely burned if trillions upon trillions of dollars worth of XRP are bought and sold daily over a span of many, many years? And I will say, before I'm going to read Galgatron's response here. But I will say this: there's so much XRP in existence. I don't think people realize, and it's a good thing. But there's so much XRP, and the amount that's burnt per transaction, it's so tiny that it would seriously. I made a video on this. Like, it would take thousands and thousands of years to actually burn through it all. And when you're talking about in the realm of drops, consider this, in case you did not know. Although it is true that there's about 4,700 times as much XRP as there is Bitcoin, if you take a look at the smallest units of each, and I'm talking about the smallest unit of a Bitcoin being called a Satoshi and the smallest unit of XRP being called a drop, they are divisible by different quantities. XRP is divisible only by 1 million. And Bitcoin is divisible by much more. It's divisible by 100 million. As a result, there are actually only 47 times as many XRP drops as there are Bitcoin Satoshi. So there's not some crazy amount there. So the reason I wanted to cite that is I said that there's a lot of XRP, and that's true, there is. But if some people think that there's 4,700 times as much, start looking on the drop level, because it's nowhere near as ridiculous as some people in the Bitcoin community would have you believe. But anyway, that said, there's just, the fees are so small that this is a non-issue. The reason for the burn is it's preventative of spam attacks. It's to prevent DDoS attacks, because it can become very costly very quickly if you're going to try and spam the network in that regard. But anyway, here's what Galgatron had to say. And he wrote, "The burn fees inversely calibrate to the price of XRP. Higher XRP price equals lower fees. As more XRP is burned, scarcity increases, which increases the price of XRP, lowering burn fees." So part of what he was talking about there is supply and demand, and I haven't heard it quite described that way, so I wanted to share that with you. All right, I'm looking forward to this. If you see what's on my screen right now, it's a tweet from Rand Neuner, and he writes, "Ready to rock and roll with Anthony Pompliano and Peter Schiff, the golden debate." And for those of you that don't know, today, those two, Anthony Pompliano, who is a major proponent for Bitcoin, and Peter Schiff, who is anti-cryptocurrency in general, and he sells gold. He's all about selling gold. He loves them yellow rocks. Well, anyway, they had a debate today, and I believe it is tomorrow that the debate is going to have been, to whatever degree they have to do editing, it's supposed to be released tomorrow on Rand Neuner's show on CNBC, Crypto Trader. So I've been looking forward to this one, because this was agreed upon by the two parties a couple weeks or so ago, and they've been talking about it on Twitter. And I don't suppose that either of them is going to be changing their mind, but I got to tell you, I am looking forward to seeing what facts Anthony Pompliano lays out to try and persuade Peter Schiff, because one of his, I will tell you what, I've heard Peter Schiff talk about crypto enough to understand that his biggest complaint, and he's got a lot of complaints, but his biggest complaint about crypto is in understanding the underlying value, and he has verbally stated that in a very recent stream that he did on his own YouTube channel. He doesn't understand why people believe it has any actual underlying value. Like, where does that actually come from? And that's why he thinks that it's a bubble and everything's going to zero. That's what he believes. And I have an idea of what Anthony's going to say. I'm sure it'll be something to the effect of the valuation model that Peter Schiff is looking at doesn't apply to an asset like this. And he'll probably get into, I'm guessing, network effects. This is just me trying to play Nostradamus and predict the future here. So I don't know. I could be wrong, but I'm guessing that's the route going to go. Regardless, this is going to be very interesting. So once the link's available, I'm going to check it out. I'm sure I'm going to be talking about it at least a little bit on my channel, and I'll link so that you guys can check it out as well. But should be a good time. And then I got this from Crypto Enzo. Thank you very much for tagging me in this, Crypto Enzo. And he wrote, "And this is what the U.S. lawmakers are realizing about Bitcoin. Just imagine what they will say about XRP. U.S. lawmakers are realizing they can't ban Bitcoin." And this is a Forbes piece. And so I wanted to cover just a little bit of this before wrapping up the video here. And this is brand new stuff. Let me scroll down. Yeah, this is the part that I wanted to read for you right here. And there's a subheading here titled, "Bitcoin ban deemed unlikely during congressional hearings." On Tuesday, the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs held a hearing on cryptocurrency and blockchain technology regulation. During that hearing, Senate Banking Committee Chairman Mike Crapo, God, I hope that's not how that name's pronounced, Mike Crapo, shared his belief that the United States would not be able to succeed in banning Bitcoin. Here's a quote. If the United States were to decide, and I'm not saying that it should, if the United States were to decide we don't want cryptocurrency to happen in the United States and tried to ban it, I'm pretty confident we couldn't succeed in doing that because this is a global innovation, said Crapo. This statement came in the form of a question to Jeremy Allaire, who is the co-founder and CEO of global financial services company Circle. In his response, Allaire explained the new reality created by the creation of Bitcoin. And now here's a quote from him. I think the challenge that we all face with this is some of these cryptocurrencies, they're literally just a piece of open source software, said Allaire. There's nothing else. It exists on the internet. It's open source software. Anyone can implement it. It runs wherever the internet runs. And these have a monetary policy where these assets are algorithmically generated. That is a challenge that every government in the world now faces. That money, digital money, will move frictionlessly everywhere in the world at the speed of the internet. And so the way I've been kind of looking at this is like I don't think that Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies are ever going to be banned. I suppose no matter how long it takes, it's going to be sufficiently regulated at some point in the future, at some junction in time. But it's getting more to the forefront now, and I mentioned in a recent video that I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that Facebook really kind of rattled some cages, so to speak, by just saying, hey, we're going to do this, deal with it, we're going to launch Libra, and we'll see if they ever actually do. But the more adoption there is in terms of cryptocurrency, the harder it's going to be to ignore this. And if regulators just assume that Bitcoin is going to go away on its own and they wouldn't have to deal with it, I think they're realizing the more time passes, that's simply not the case. Cryptocurrencies are here to stay for a lot of reasons. There's real utility to them. And people recognize that even if we don't know exactly what the landscape will look like once the asset class has matured quite a bit, still, there's something to it, and people seem to understand that. And if you want proof of that, just look at who doesn't believe it. Look at all the major corporations that they're building on top. Look at all of the big names like TD Ameritrade and Fidelity delving in. If they thought that this was some sort of fly-by-night fad and it was just going to go away, they wouldn't be investing the millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in terms of development. It costs a lot of money to build the infrastructure here, but it's actually being built. And so even if we don't know exactly what this is going to look like in the next 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it is, it's going to be here. It will be here in one capacity or another. So the United States, I think the more educated they get, the more on the topic, the more they're going to realize that it would be smart to allow it, because if you don't, all you're doing is saying no to innovation, and that's not going to be good for the United States. It's not going to be good for the world. But in particular, if the rest of the world's like, hey, we like innovation, come on over here. And you do see some of that. You do see companies leaving the United States. I've cited some recently. But, if this isn't figured out, there's just going to be more companies leaving the U.S. en masse. So anyway, I guess I'll wrap up the video there. But I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo!